We're now going to consider briefly the risk factors in your team. So, your employer will have carried out a ongoing risk assessment which looks at where sexual harassment is likely to be encountered by its staff at work. And it will look at those people that are most at risk and what steps it can take to try and minimize those risks. Make sure that you actually understand the risks in your team. And if you want to, ask to see the risk assessment if it hasn't already been shared with you. And as I've already said, feed in any suggestions that you have which could improve the situation in the team that you manage. You should also make sure that you follow any steps that your employer has decided to take to reduce the likelihood of any member of your staff being harassed. You also, of course, need to support the staff that you manage to raise concerns. And to do that, you need to foster an environment where your staff know that they can come to you to report incidents and are confident that you will support them and treat them seriously. But your role isn't just about telling staff how to raise concerns. They need to believe that you will support them if they do that. And it may take time to build up trust, and that's one reason why being a good role model is so important. It's also important to know when to intervene and how to do it effectively. And that's going to depend on the situation and whether the harassment is coming from another member of staff or a third party, such as a client or a customer. And we're going to go through some of the ways that you can intervene in both situations in a few minutes. You will also need to deal with any complaints in line with your employer's policy and keep a record of any conversations that you have with them about this. Bear in mind that if you create an electronic record of your conversations, so you've noted them down on a Word document or in your email or in any other form of electronic data, you have to keep them filed in accordance with your employee's policy on data. And if you keep handwritten notes, make sure that they are kept in a safe place. If you've had a quiet word with someone about their behaviour and it hasn't improved, you will need to escalate matters, and that might mean commencing disciplinary action against them. Before you do that, please speak to HR and ask for advice to make sure that process is handled correctly. The duty to prevent sexual harassment applies to third parties, and your employer has a duty to take reasonable steps to prevent it. In law, employers are generally liable for any harassment that their staff experience in the course of their employment, unless they can show that they've taken reasonable steps to prevent it. That includes harassment that they've encountered by third parties. And when we talk about third parties, what we mean are those people that are not directly employed by your employer or people who are under their control. So if you work in the service sector, for example, this could be clients or customers. If you work in a healthcare setting, this could be patients or their families. And if you work in education, it could be pupils, students, or their families. So let's assume that someone in your team has been sexually harassed by a third party. How do you go about handling it? Well, you'll need to follow any guidance that your employer has put in place about this. And if you don't know whether they've got anything in place or have a specific policy, please ask because you will need to understand it. But depending on the circumstances, you might encourage an employee to walk away from anyone who has sexually harassed them, or if it happens over the phone, to put the phone down and support them in that choice. It may be appropriate to take over from the call or to step in if it happens in a face-to-face situation and make it clear to the person that's doing it that their behaviour is inappropriate and you won't be able to continue serving them unless they stop. And in some cases, you may need to ask the person to leave your premises or call security if they won't do so. It can, of course, feel much more difficult to intervene if the person who is harassing a member of your staff is an important client. If you don't feel confident challenging them directly, speak to a more senior manager, report what's happened and ask them to escalate it to the right person, which will usually be the relationship manager.